That's fun. I would like to call this January 9th, 2025 Board of Education meeting to order. George, can you please take the roll call?
Sure. Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Mrs. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Micko?
Here.
Ms. Stochek?
Here.
And Mrs. Hausum.
Here.
Everyone is present. Can we stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, our district has developed and is currently engaged in a 3-year strategic plan which reflects the values, beliefs, and hopes of our students, staff, parents, and community. There are 4 strategic priorities to the plan: transforming teaching and learning, aligning staff and resources, cultivating culture and climate, and leveraging funding and facilities. Our strategic priorities give actionable focus to our district's purpose and mission and guide the work of our strategic plan. And we start with board president. Okay. Nominations for the board president.
Yeah, so what we'll do is, as Mrs. Cobain said, nominations of the board president. Any board member can nominate any board member. Once the nominations are concluded, when I do the roll call, just call out the person that you wish to be board president from the nominations, and whoever has the majority, that's who will be board president.
I would like to nominate Mrs. Laura Wolf Hausum.
Any other nominations? Am I leading this? Okay.
You are now.
Any other nominations? Okay, then we vote.
Okay.
Okay.
Mrs. Bissell?
Laura.
Mrs. Cobain?
Laura.
Mr. Micko?
Laura.
And Mrs. Hausum.
What about me? My vote doesn't count.
I'm sorry. Ms. Stochek. I marked
Laura. My vote better count for 2 then.
you. Sorry.
Man.
I apologize. With that, congratulations, Laura.
Thank you.
If you want to meet me at the podium for the oath of office. Sorry.
Just forgot me.
All right, so I'll read the oath, and then at the end, if you agree, say I do. So please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as president of the Strongsville Board of Education to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuation in said office and until your successor is chosen and qualified? If so, please say I do.
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Do I move over? Do I move? Huh?
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to working with everyone in this capacity in the next year. Thank you. Next, we will move on to the election oath of office of our Board of Education Vice President. Do I have nominations for Vice President? I nominate Michelle Bissell.
I wasn't doing it. I went brain dead.
Are there any other nominations? Hearing none. Can we take the vote?
Mrs. Bissell? Mrs. Kilbane?
Michelle.
Mr. Miko?
Michelle?
Ms. Stavcek?
Michelle. Or me, as she calls me.
And Mrs. Hausum?
Michelle.
Michelle, congratulations. You want to meet at the podium? If you agree, say I do. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the Strongsville Board of Education to the best of your ability, in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuous and set office and until your successor is chosen and qualified? If so, please say I do. Congratulations.
This is a privilege, thank you, and I intend to serve you well.
All right, we're going to move on with our organizational meeting. Next up on our organizational meeting, we do have public comment, but the two that have signed in, if you guys are all right and waiting till we go into our work session, is that all right, Bonnie? Do you mind? We'll go through this. If you have somewhere you need to be, we can go ahead and you can come up now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have 3 minutes no longer than that.
Okay, all right, no problem, Bonnie. You can just state your name and address? Okay.
Okay, my name is Bonnie Tennis, 9407 Brushwood Lane. First, I would like to say again that I'm not part of any group. I do not represent any group, and I'm no longer affiliated with any political party. I do not communicate and share any of my information with anyone except this school board, this school administration, and the city council, and whatever printouts I distribute is all public information. I'm going to start with this quote. A story is only half told if there is only one side presented. Just so you know, I do not mean to upset or revenge anything or anyone. All I want to do is present the information from the other side, which is the resident side, and be listened. Some of it might be aligned with what you believe and the facts that you are presenting, but some of it might not. But that is not a reason to try to shut it down. We all should be able to agree and disagree, but still concentrate on the positive outcome. All districts, and this one is no different, presents residents with the information that is favorable to them and information that makes them look good, and that is understandable. But if the district is willing to present that information to residents, should also be willing to accept the challenges that come with it if someone decides to question that or counter with other information. Here's an example. When district talked about the tax rate and emphasized how low Strongsville rate is, Shaker Heights was used as an example. Although it is true that Strongsville residents would pay a lot more in property tax if moved to Shaker Heights, but at the same time, it's also true that if Strongsville resident would move to Medina, would pay less in property tax. Both statements are true. The first one was favorable to the district, and the other was not. What needs to be presented is the why, which does not exist. Why Shaker residents are paying more and Strongsville residents are not, at least not yet. The why is the age of the city, the type of the community, residents' income, and many other factors that contribute to that. Again, if my house would be in Medina and appraised the same as it's in Strongsville, over the last 10 years, I would save over $10,000 in property tax. When I'm making comments about property tax, school tax, I'm not advocating for myself. Yes, I am a long-time resident paying for third school generation, senior, and on Social Security. I'm not in trouble yet. But my husband is still working full-time, that in the future, if things don't change, I and many others will be in the same situation as many of the residents currently are. To say that the examples that I provided are irrelevant to the current situation is not true. The anger should not be directed at the residents, but it should be directed toward the system that is very unfair. I could provide thousands of these examples, and here is just one. How can a home that is 150 years old, built in 1873 with asbestos, old iron pipes, old kitchen, bathrooms, busy street, 90% traffic, septic tank, no central air, with only 1,300 square feet, increase in value by 57% in just 1 year? went from $165,000 to $260,000. Property tax increase over $1,000. Even without this levy, this homeowner will pay $700 more this year than last year. And since 2017, this owner property tax increased by $19,000. Now let's take a home that is only 22 years old, built in 2002, brick exterior with 4,900 square feet, 3 times the size of the old home, 2,375 square foot basement, 3 bathrooms, central air, 3-car garage, nice quiet street, lot almost as big as the old house, increase in value only 19%, which in terms property tax is not an increase but a decrease by $317 minus the levy that did not pass. We'll have over $1,100,000 decrease in the property tax. This resident had also a decrease in 2021 and 2018. This resident tax total amount will be less than it was 15 years ago. How can anyone see that as a fair increase? For a property reappraisal, we should be outraged. You say it's not your problem. Elected city officials say it's not their problem. County says it's not their problem. It's a Columbus problem. Someone said that there are winners and losers in these reappraisals. Actually, those people are not losers. They are victims of very unfair system, and nobody is doing anything about it. Many of them can't simply pay anymore. And if residents that live in newer homes and are better to do would be aware of this unfair tax system, maybe they would be not so eager to file cases to lower their property tax, or maybe they would be willing to donate some money to schools, especially if they are able, capable, and still have children in school. Collecting cans and food is not enough. Decisions that you, the Board of Education, and this administration make are very important, not only to the children of this district, but to all the residents and to the whole community, which can either build or destroy, unite or divide. The 2 paths that were presented, one by Board of Education, hardly any cuts, and the other by the Strongsville PAC, which was a little bit more aggressive, did not lead to a positive outcome. But that does not mean that there was no other path to take. All the time and the energy was spent on only those 2 options. You have a policy change on the books today that you are going to vote, and it's about the meetings. And I hope that you make the right decision and become more, but not less transparent. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Maggie, it's up to you if you want to, you're going to wait? Okay, thank you. All right, next on our agenda is the appointment of liaisons to committees for 1-year terms. This is our city council, which has been Mr. Micko and myself. Strongsville Education, which has been Mrs. Kilbane and myself. Strongsville PTA Council, which has been Mrs. Bissell and Mrs. Kilbane. Ohio School Boards Association legislation, which has been Mr. Micko. And Ohio School Boards Association Student Achievement, Mrs. Kilbane and Ms. Stavchek. I haven't had a chance to touch base with everyone to see if they were happy in their roles or if we wanted to switch anything. So I think we can vote on it tonight, right, George? And if anyone wants to make any changes, we can revisit it. Okay. Does anyone have any burning desire right now to change anything? Everyone's good? All right.
I was only going to suggest that historically, we've only had 1 person on legislation, but we can have more than 1. And with the biennium budget coming up, it probably makes sense to have someone else.
That's a great suggestion. Do we have any volunteers? I mean, if no one else wants, do you want to do it?
Whatever you guys want, I'm happy to.
I'm going to say, well, why don't we put Mrs. Bissell on it with Mr. Micko for the coming year? Thank you.
I was going to say, I don't mind doing the Strongsville Education Foundation or the PTA Council. I don't remember which one you are, if you want to switch it.
I don't mind, I don't have a problem
I'm
switching.
both of those, but I just do them
Oh.
both pretty much by myself.
Do
Do you
you need-
want to come?
I'm going to say, which one is, are you PTA, Michelle?
I just can't, it's really hard for me to make the Education Foundation meeting, 7:30.
Yeah, that's hard. You have kids at home.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's, I've done it before. I can, it's just challenging.
I don't think, I mean, I'm just saying, because I do it, I don't think there's a need for like 2 people to come at 7:30.
There was one
But
meeting
it-
where you and I both showed up and they were like, wow, we've never had 2 board members here.
Yeah, so I'm
Oh.
thinking, I mean,
Oh, I was saying if she wanted to switch something out, if she took something else on.
oh, okay.
Well, if you want to switch and we want to alternate every other month, I can do that. If you'd rather do PTA, that's fine.
Whatever. I was just saying, just because I have my name on one, so I didn't mind if you took on another one, if I took on another one. Especially I could do the early one, I can do the 7:30, so that's not a problem, or I can do the Thursday at 9:30.
You want to do PTA and Education Foundation? That's fine too, if you want to do them both.
If you want to do them both, we can take turns.
Isn't Laura on one of them, though?
I'm on Education Foundation, but again, it's been hard for me to get to the 7:30 meetings, so I would
Okay.
be glad to
Oh,
switch
wait, I
my
can do
name out
that.
with yours.
I can
Okay.
do the Education Foundation. I still want to keep the school board student achievement, though. Okay. Just put me on whenever you want.
Okay,
Just tell me where I'm at, and we'll be
Okay.
there, and I'll go there.
all right.
Well, you could do, because we can just then switch on and off.
Don't tell me what to do.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to keep Rich and I on city council. Education Foundation is going to be Sharon and Haley.
I will show up to anyone I want to.
Yeah, that's
PTA
right.
council is going to be Michelle and Sharon. Legislation is going to be Richard and Michelle. And student achievement is going to remain Sharon and Haley. This is an action item, and we need to have a motion.
Am I adding my name to 2 or 1?
We're
Oh, I was just
PTA.
putting you on Education Foundation. Is that okay?
And student achievement.
And your student achievement.
Okay, not PTA. I'm doing the 7:31. Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me know when we're done.
Yep.
Just, before the motion, just give me a minute. I
Okay.
just edited
Sorry.
the agenda. I'm going to refresh. Well, I wanted to make sure it was correct before I.
I was just trying to swap around so we had equal amounts of things.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to feel overwhelmed. Are you feeling overwhelmed, Mr. Miko?
If you refresh, it should be updated. Take a look and make sure that's what, it's captured it correctly.
Yep, looks good. All right, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion? Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Okay, next up, we have appointment of liaison to committee for a 2-year term. This is for Southwest General Hospital. It is a 2-year term. Right now, we have Richard Miko as our liaison delegate with myself, Laura Halsam, as an alternate. This is an annual meeting that typically happens in April. I'm fine leaving it the way it is and make sure everybody else is, I guess. Do I have a motion that we can discuss?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Any discussion?
It's fine by me,
Okay.
unless anyone else is interested, I don't care.
Hearing none, George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, we have letter F, reaffirmation of a 3rd year of a 3-year term for Mrs. Bissell as our Polaire Career Center representative. That is just to keep that in everybody's mind, that this is the 3rd year for a 3-year term. Next, we have board committee appointments for 1-year terms. This is also an action item. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, second by Mrs. Kilbane. Do I have any discussion? Is everyone happy with their committees that they have been serving on?
I'm open to whatever, so if someone wants to try something different, I'm happy to move, or I can stay where I am.
Okay. Sharon?
No, is that like the finance committee,
Mhm.
Yeah.
policy committee?
Yep.
No, I'm good. Well, I'm on the business advisory and I'm on the finance.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Unless somebody wants to switch, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Rich? Good?
I'm
Haley? Good? Okay. Hearing no discussion. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Mrs. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Next, we have establishment of our 2025 Board of Education meeting dates. Those dates are attached to the agenda, and that is part of our consent calendar, so we will vote on that at the end. Next, we have our Roberts Rules.
Ms. Hausum, I'm sorry if I can
Yep.
interrupt. We do have a couple dates that are highlighted in yellow
have to-
that
Okay,
we could do that now in terms of coming to agreement on which of those dates we want to go with.
okay. If everyone could open their attachment.
And we printed out a copy.
It's
for
here,
you to
and you
decide
got-
too.
All right.
Can I ask, what time is commencement on May 22nd?
I think it's
Did we-
6.
Is it 6?
Okay.
Okay, well, I won't be there then.
Well, we've moved that one to May 21st, so we should be good.
The
meeting?
meeting.
The board meeting, we've bumped to May 21st.
Okay.
It's the first one that we need to.
Yeah, the first, yeah, exactly, Haley. The first, we have somebody that has a conflict on, so just kind of going through it. The first conflict is the work session in May. We have a member of the team that will be out of town. So we can either keep it the 8th and we will be down one person, or move it to the 1st if everybody could be there.
What day is the first on?
They're both Thursdays.
Thursday.
What is
Yeah.
it?
They're both Thursdays.
It's
Oh,
just the
they're both
first Thursday
Thursdays.
instead of the second.
Oh, that's fine.
I could do both.
I could do the
Yeah,
first.
the first is fine for me.
Okay.
I will say the only challenge for me for the first is not so much the attendance piece, but normally that first meeting, I like to do the 5-year forecast. By having it May 1st, I don't think I'll have it prepared in time. So I would just have to do it at the recognition meeting, which would be at the high school, so kind of a different setting.
I think we've done that.
We have done
I
this in the
recall
past.
sitting
Yeah.
there in the audience for
Yeah,
that.
it's just harder for conversation,
Yeah.
Right.
just because of the setup of the high school. So I just wanted to make the board aware of just that aspect
Okay.
while making the decision.
So May 1st.
Everybody go with May 1st? And with George's caveat?
Yep.
Okay. The next one is the second meeting in June. There's a conflict. Remember, we want to keep that as late as possible so George can close out the fiscal year. So 26th is what the meeting is supposed to be. We're recommending the 30th, which I believe it's a Monday.
Is that a Monday?
Yeah, so it's a Monday. So the decision is leave it at the 26th, and I can't remember who it was, but whoever can't
Me.
be here.
It was me.
Oh, was it? Can't be here, or move it to Monday, the 30th.
Haley, does Monday, the 30th
I
work
can
for
do
you?
Monday, yeah.
Okay,
I'm fine for either one.
good. Sharon?
6:15.
Yeah, the 30th is fine for me.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's go with the 30th.
See, George, you win one there.
I did.
You get
So
a few more-
6:15
I feel like I
executive
won.
session and then 7, okay.
Correct, yeah.
We are-
Two in
we-
the
we're
sense
still
of giving me
doing the
more time for the
6:15 then,
forecast.
too, on
Yeah.
that same date? I mean,
Yes.
who's ever supposed to come in, we have to
Yeah.
tell them. Okay.
All right, the next one was a conflict, I think this one was me, July 10th, so that's a Thursday. We could either keep it the 10th or bump it up to the 9th, which is a Wednesday.
I could do both.
9th works for me.
Same for me, I can do either.
Everybody
9th,
go with the 9th?
Sharon?
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
good.
All right, so those were,
And that's another 6:15.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of them, we've already agreed, the December date, we moved, and just as a special note, we moved it to the middle school based on having the chamber strings perform. There was a comment of making that an annual thing, so we just moved the location so we have more room. And unless noted on the, up top, it's the second and fourth Thursday, unless noted as the first or third or whatever it may be. So that, George, I've got the sheet, so I can update it and re-upload it,
Right.
so it's accurate. Any other conflicts that have come up since this discussion that we want to take a look at?
So we did May 1st, June 30th, and July 9th.
Correct.
And mine's fine now.
It's good, okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hausen.
No problem, thank you. Okay, moving on. Robert's Rules. Robert's Rules of Order will be
Hang on.
used in the absence of board policy.
I thought it was a vote, but it's not. Sorry. Go
What's
ahead.
that?
I thought this was a vote, but it's a consent, so you're correct.
I've got my little yellow
Yeah, I
bubble,
did.
but I may have missed one. Establishment of service fund for fiscal year 2026. According to section 3315.1C ORC, the treasurer of the Board of Education has certified that the number of pupils enrolled in the Strongsville City School District is 5,698 as of December 1st, 2024. By law, a sum not to exceed $2 for each child so enrolled, or $20,000, whichever is greater, may be set aside from the general fund to be known as the service fund, to be used only in paying the expenses of the members of the Board of Education actually incurred in the performance of their duties or of their official representatives when sent out of the school district for the purpose of promoting the welfare of the schools under their charge, or in paying the expenses of members to be of such boards actually incurred in training and orientation to the performance of their duties from the date of election or appointment to the date of administration of the oath of office. Such payments shall be made only in such amount as may be approved by the board on statement of the several members or members to be furnished at the next succeeding regular meeting of such board. No board shall appropriate or expend a sum greater than $60,000 in any one school year from such service fund, ORC 3315.14. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that a service fund be established by the Board of Education in the amount of $20,000. All right. Next up, recommendation by superintendent authorizing treasurer to reinvest available funds for 2025 in accordance with board policy and establish administrative procedures. Results of such investments will be reported in monthly financial reports throughout the year. And B, to pay bills within the adopted appropriations in 2025. Next, we have, legal counsel appointments. Be it resolved that the superintendent of schools and his designees be authorized to contact legal counsel as necessary for the successful performance of their duties. Legal counsel is designated to be Squire Patton Boggs, LLP, Peppel and Wagner, LTD, Riley Law Firm, LLC, Brinza McIntyre and Seed, LLP, Peters, Kalal and Markakis Company, LPA, and Weston Hurd, LLP. This is an action item and we need to vote, so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? I'm sure I murdered some of those names, sorry. No discussion, you can take the roll.
The one thing I will say is, all these attorneys that we use, they're specialized in different areas, and it's billable hours, so it's not on a retainer, it's based on as used, and each one has its various needs.
Great. Thank you, George.
Ms. Stelcheck?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes,
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
motion passes. Next, we have Board of Education meeting minutes. Provided that the Board of Education members receive the minutes of previous meetings at least 5 or more days in advance of a meeting, authorization is given for the board to waive reading of the minutes at the meeting. Resolution requesting notification. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the resolution requesting that the Board of Education be notified by the tax commissioner of any application for exemption from taxation for any property located within the district. The resolution is pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 5715.27. Next, we have our tax budget for fiscal year 2026, and I get to turn it over to George now.
Thank you, Mrs. Hausum. This is an annual resolution that comes at the organizational meeting. I do have a PowerPoint slide that I present with it. What the tax budget is it's the beginning part of planning for the upcoming fiscal year and the tax rates for the calendar year, as our fiscal year is 2 overlapping calendar years. However, we collect, the tax rates are based on a tax year, which is a tax year that just passed 2024, and the collection year of 2025. Those are on a calendar year basis, so a fiscal year overlaps 2 collection years. The County Budget Commission must certify tax rates to each subdivision or other taxing authority by taxing unit by March 1st for school districts under ORC 5705.35, and the Budget Commission is required to issue an official certificate of resources for the upcoming fiscal year. When the Budget Commission is setting tax rates based on a taxing unit's need, its determination must be based on information the County Budget Commission requested the taxing authority to provide within the alternative tax budget. And the alternative tax budget consists of 5 schedules. The division of levies tax, or the division of taxes levied, statement of fund activity for the upcoming fiscal year, in this case would be next fiscal year 2026, the unvoted general obligation debt, the voted debt, and tax anticipation notes. So the first schedule is the division of taxes levied, and this is timely as the new tax rates, the effective rates, I shall say, just came out in the end of December, beginning January, which allowed us to prepare this tax budget. There's an effective tax rate for residential and the effective commercial rate, and then also inside millage and what each of these levies generate. So in our division of levies, we have the inside millage, which is 5.6 mils. That is no impact to the effective rate. And one thing I forgot to add is with the increase in property values for the 6th annual reappraisal, with House Bill 920 as rates, as values increased, the rates decreased, but that is subject to the 20 mil floor. I'll get into that a little later, but now it's starting to get, we were always away from it, but as values have increased and with a levy coming off, we're getting closer to it. So a little more in the next slide on that, but we have the inside millage is 5.6 mils, which is generates about close to $13 million, and these amounts requested the Budget Commission, that's at 100%. So our collection rate last year was 97.11, I think 97.16, somewhere around there. It actually, for the calendar year that just passed, it increased to 98.11%, so almost a 1% increase, which represented about $700,000. So it's positive. Each of the last few years, we've seen a slight increase in the collection rate. Then the current expense levies that we have, first one in 1976, the maximum rate authorized was 31 mils. The effective rate currently is 3.68. The reason why that one's higher, the maximum rate, is that's when House Bill 920 was originally passed, so there was a tax reform at that time, so any previous levies were just rolled into one. And then in 78, we had a 6.7 mil levy, which is now the effective rate of 1.23 mils. In 1986, there was one for 9.7 mils, which the effective rate currently is 2.96. 1990 was 6.98 mils, the effective rate is 2.46. 1999, the maximum rate was 4.5, the current effective rate is 1.9 mils. And then we have the old renewal levy, which was passed in the early 2000s, which is going to expire in tax year of 2026, collection year 2027. The maximum rate authorized was 6 mils. The current effective rate was 3.37 mils, which generates about $8.5 million. And then the last one, in 2008, we have a 6.5 mil levy that the effective rate is 3.9. So total within the general fund, the effective rate for residential is 25 mils. The permanent improvement levy was passed in 05 for 1 mil. The current effective rate is a half a mil almost, and it brings in about $1.3 million. And then the bond issue, that was passed originally at 3 mils. That's not subject to House Bill 920. If you recall, when we had that special meeting a month ago, we lowered it based on, because we only need to collect what we pay. So as the rates went up, we had to adjust the tax rate resolution. So now that is 1.6 mils to generate what we need for bond. So overall, our total effective residential rate is 27.22. Commercial is 39.77. For the general fund portion of it, as I stated, the effective rate is 25.11 mils. That is about 10 mils, 10.5 mils lower than it was last calendar year. Part of the decrease, 5.12 mils, the effective rate, was from the levy expiration, and 5.43 mils was due to House Bill 920 reduction factor with the increase in valuations. So why I'm bringing it up and why it's important is, with another big increase, this was a 27% increase, it dropped the effective rate by 5 mils. If we had, there's a 3-year triennial update in 3 years, and then following that, there's the 6th annual budget. So if we have another combination where it generates about 30% increase over that time frame, it'll drop us most likely to the 20 mil floor. Once we hit that 20 mil floor, then House Bill 920 is out of play, and then any increase in valuation after that is a 1-for-1 increase in taxes. Increase in revenue to the school district, but however, it's, as Bonnie said, there were some winners and losers. Everyone's going to see an increase based on that percentage increase. So that's key to, that's an important key to note as we're approaching that 20 mil floor. And then as Ms. Tennis mentioned, the rankings. The reason why Medina's not on our rankings is we strictly looked at Cuyahoga County. Nothing because they were lower or whatnot. We just looked at our tax budget that we have to report is to Cuyahoga County, so we're just looking at the tax rates that we receive for Cuyahoga County. Last calendar year, we ranked overall our effective residential tax rate was 38.31 mils. It was 26 out of 31, fifth from the bottom. This year, our total is 27.22 residential, 30th out of 31, so second from the bottom. So to that point, if the same value of your house was anywhere in the county other than Westlake, which is the lowest in the county, you would pay a higher residential tax rate. There are different reasons why we're lower as well. We have a commercial base where some of these properties don't. Westlake also has a commercial base. If you look outside the county, as Ms. Tennis might have said, I don't know Medina's figure, but they might be lower. Aduto Brunswick is at the 20 mil floor. And again, based on what I said about the 20 mil floor, although it's low, is that somewhere you want to be as a taxpayer as well, based on the House Bill 920. So more or less point of information, more than anything, just to kind of share that is where the kind of keep an eye on essentially the next 6 years with the triennial and the 6th annual updates on where the district could be headed. Any questions on that? No, that was a lot. That was a book. Schedule 2 is the statement of fund activity. It's the estimated beginning cash that we would end at this year going into next year. So the general fund is tied to the 5-year forecast. All the other funds are just estimates, and then we update this again at the end of the fiscal year at our June 30th meeting to submit to the county. Didn't list them on the slides or on the attachment for the tax budget that's going to be submitted to the county. Our unvoted debt, we have 2. One is paid out of the general fund. The issue date was 2005. It was a 2-part. It was one for, we purchased the the preschool at that time. It was previously a church, so it was a loan to renovate that space. And at the time, we had acquired school buses. The school buses portion is paid off. It's just the preschool portion that's remaining. So the final date of maturity for that is 2035. And then the capital improvement fund, the PI, we have the Muraski improvements that's paid out of the PI. There's the principal outstanding there is about $2.3 million, and the annual payment is $275,000. And for the first one, I forgot to mention the amount outstanding at the beginning of the calendar year is $635 or $635,000. And the next slide is our voted debt. We only have one. It's the 2013 issue for the middle school, build of the middle school, renovations of the high school, and other renovations throughout the district. The original amount was $81,000. The current principal outstanding was $54,935,000, and the current principal and interest payment is $3,562,000, and the final date of maturity is December 1st of 2045. So about another 20 years. In Schedule 5, tax anticipation notes, we have none. So that concludes the tax budget. Any questions? All right, turn it back to you, Mrs. Hausum.
Thank you, George. Next up are investments. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the board authorizes the treasurer to invest up to a maximum of 40% of the district's interim funds in commercial paper notes in accordance with Board Policy 6144-investments. Next, district credit card limits. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that per Board Policy 6423, the annual credit card limits be per card holder and/or account be approved as listed in the exhibit. Travel payment and reimbursement. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that payment and reimbursement rates for per diem meals, lodging, and mileage be approved as listed in the exhibit. Mileage rates shall not exceed the federal IRS prescribed mileage rate. OSBA annual membership dues and subscriptions. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the Board of Education renews its membership with the Ohio School Boards Association, including e-publications, effective January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. OSBA legal assistance funds. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that the board enters into a contract with OSBA for the legal assistance fund consultant services for the period January 1st, 2025 through December 31st, 2025. Cost for this service is $250. House Bill 9, Ohio Public Records Training Certification. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the treasurer that to be in compliance with all Ohio Public Record statutes and the Board of Education requirement that the treasurer, George K. Aganastu, be the designee on behalf of the Board of Education for public records training. Broadcast of board meetings. In accordance with Board Policy 0169.3, the board authorizes the public broadcast of regular board meetings during the calendar year. Resolution for group health, vision, and dental insurance for board members. Be it resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that board members may participate at their own expense in group health, vision, and dental insurance plans provided to employees of the district. Hiring authority. Be it resolved that the Strongsville Board of Education authorizes the superintendent to employ personnel on a temporary basis between board meetings. And this brings us to the consent calendar.
Mrs. Hausum, that one had.
Oh, did that one have a vote? I'm sorry. It did, and I didn't have a yellow bubble. All right, that requires a vote, so do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, can you take the roll?
Ms. Lawchuk,
Yes.
Ms. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bissell.
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, this brings us to the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education in adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type-action consent, which items constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do we have any such requests? All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcik, second by Ms. Kilbane. George, take the roll.
Ms. Lawchuk,
Yes.
Ms. Cobain,
Yes.
Mr. Miko,
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum,
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell.
Yes.
Motion passes. Meeting notifications. The next regular Board of Education meeting is scheduled to be held January 23rd at 6:15 p.m. for executive session, followed by public session at approximately 7 p.m. in the meeting room of the Administration Building, 18199 Cook Avenue, Strongsville, Ohio.
And I will add, to avoid confusion, for those watching, once this organizational meeting concludes, we're going to go right into a work session.
Yes. Thanks, George. All right, and that adjourns our organizational meeting at 7:45.
We need a vote.
Oh, and I need a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Bissell, second by Mrs. Cobain.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes,
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
motion passes. And we are adjourned. Right. I'd like to call this January 9th, 2025 Board of Education work session to order. George, can you take the roll?
Mrs. Bissell?
Here.
Ms. Cobain?
Here.
Mr. Miko?
Still here.
Ms. Stavcek?
Here.
Mrs. Hausum?
Here. All present. All right, public comment. I'd like to thank Maggie for her patience. You could state your name and address.
I think you guys know I don't have a desire to go home right away. Let my husband put the kids to bed. Maggie Koza, 9812 Hazelwood Avenue. Good evening and Happy New Year. There were some things that happened over the last few board meetings, and this particularly has to do with public participation. I have two concerns. I reviewed the board policies on public participation at board meetings, 0169.1. I will not be reading the entire thing, just pulling out parts that I think are relevant to my point. Letter A, public participation shall be permitted, number 1, as indicated on the order of business. Number 2, before the board takes official action on any issue of substance. Number 3, at the discretion of the presiding officer. Jump down to letter E. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes. Duration, unless extended by the presiding officer. Jump down to G. The presiding officer may, 1, interrupt, warn, or terminate a participant's session when they make comments that are repetitive, obscene, and/or comments that constitute a true threat. Number 2, request any individual to stop speaking and/or leave the meeting when that person does not observe reasonable decorum or is disruptive to the conduct and/or orderly progress of the meeting. I implore all of you to really absorb these rules. No one should be able to go on for 16 minutes and 7 seconds. This isn't the first time you didn't adhere to the 3-minute rule. Flexibility can be important to give someone the time they need to express what they are here to say, which is a First Amendment right. I am disappointed by the actions of the board president at the time, who had the authority to enforce the time limit. I do want to thank Mrs. Cobain for interjecting. You should have been supported by your president. That was his job. The second concern was the alarming words by the person who spoke at the December 12th meeting. It was mentioned that you were willing to work with them. One man does not speak for an entire community of approximately 45,000, or any person for that matter. If you're willing to sit down with them, then you need to offer the same opportunity with anyone or any organization that has such a request, or you need to set your boundaries better. These concerns do nothing more but put you on a watch. We will be watching every single meeting and timing public comment. We will be watching where you donate any of your campaign funds as well, particularly anything to the group who was responsible for the disinformation spread during all 3 past campaigns. We are exhausted out here in the community, and when I mention we, it's those of us who put in volunteer hours to advocate for our schools. I have no doubt you share the same feelings. Why break the rules for those who are working against the schools? I really don't know how to advocate for a district that lets this continue without consequence. It sets a poor example to our children who are taught, if you break the rules, you get consequences. That isn't what they are seeing. We elected you for common sense and putting students first. All we get from you in responses now seem artificial, or they sound like you don't even want to understand where we are coming from. So unless we get to some level of understanding, you're never going to get the support you need in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Next on the agenda is our approval of minutes from our December 12th, 2024 regular board meeting. Motion to approve the minutes of the December 12th, 2024 regular board meeting. All audio recordings will be a permanent part of the minutes and are available upon request through the treasurer's office. Video recordings shall be maintained based on the availability of the selected digital online platform. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Ryba.
Thank you, Ms. Hausum. Before we get to the discussion items, I'm going to turn it over to Dave and Jenny to introduce one of our recommendations for an open position in the district.
So as they're walking up here, Dave, our Director of Instructional Technology, and we have a new appointment for our Coordinator of Technology. I just want to take a minute and thank Teresa Williamson. I'm sure we'll recognize her at the retirement celebration in May, but I don't remember exactly how many years she's been here. It's got to be over 30.
It's about 30 years in the
30
district,
years?
and about 20 years or so in her current role.
Yeah, so for anybody that doesn't know Teresa, she works incredibly hard behind the scenes, ensuring that everybody has access to our systems, including all of our technology that is used within the classrooms, that passwords work, and everything is cohesive along, under Dave's direction. But she's just such a go-to person with any question you have when it comes to our systems like that. And so her diligence and work over the years has just been exceptional. And we're going to be sad to see her go, but we're thrilled to have a replacement for her that brings another skill set, an additional skill set to our district. So I'll let Dave go ahead and talk about that.
So on the agenda tonight is Dr. Christopher Broughton. He comes to us with a little over 20 years experience out of Cleveland Metro, working in their research and evaluation department, but he has familiarity with Power School and EMIS. Those are two big components of this job. They're big shoes to fill. We have Teresa with us for one more month, so he's going to get some good on-the-job training. We're already looking into other professional development opportunities to help him out, to fill in some of the gaps. But he's been here since Monday, and it's been nonstop, and just keep on asking questions and writing things down. Surprised you see him with the multiple pieces of notebook paper and notebooks, and I don't know how he keeps it all straight, but it's going to be a fun month and hopefully a good fun time with us.
Good evening, Board. I'd first like to say, my name's Chris Broughton, and I'd like to say congratulations, President Housel and Vice President Bissell. I'm still learning names, but I will say that I'll be short, but again, I started on Monday, and it's just been I've been very impressed with the workplace culture and how I've been welcomed, and it's going to be an honor to be a Mustang and carry on and expand upon Teresa's great work. So thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Well, we're very excited to, pending the board vote, to have Chris as a member of our team. And as he shared, not only does he have a good foundational skills in the essential functions of the job, but based on his time in Cleveland, as he said, research and data analysis has a wealth of knowledge in that area, which in the future, once he learns the job here, could add an asset to the work that we're doing as a district. So I have been impressed with Chris each time we've been able to meet and talk, and so thank you for taking time tonight to meet the board and be here. We appreciate it. All right, under the superintendent's report, there's 2 discussion items. We're going to start with the first one under board policy. So let me just kind of give context of what we're talking about tonight. So we have a board policy committee that Haley and Michelle sit on. And how the policy committee works is Neola, our policy company, recommends a variety of policies twice a year. As well as there's usually some local policies that we just decide based on things that are going on that we want to put and talk about. The policy committee reviews those and decides whether or not these are policies they want to have or not, or keep with. And once we decide that, then we start to edit. There's suggestions and there's things that we can make individual discretion on. But then we start to wordsmith, and then they eventually become on a board agenda and the full board votes. There are some times where there's board policy or bylaw decisions that the policy reps say, you know what, this is not something for just 2 board members to decide. We need to talk about this as a full 5-person board, and these are the 2 policies here. So tonight, we are going to go through kind of a policy committee process with the full board, which is to say, the first decision will be, do you want to continue to entertain this discussion? Is this a policy or a policy change for both of these that you want to continue to entertain? If the majority of the board wants to entertain that policy change or discussion, then we would get into the work of actually let's revise and wordsmith and get the policy or bylaw to the point that we want it to be. And then once that happens, it would go on the board agenda for a first reading, second reading, and final reading, and that's where you would vote on it. So that's kind of where we're starting with today. So we want to start with the first one, which is the broadcasting and taping of board meetings. And you can see, as George has on the board, there are the proposed changes there. So if we just take a look at it, the one change that we're recommending is removing references to audio or video recordings and just putting it as recordings because we don't do just solely audio recordings anymore. We just do video. So wherever you see audio or video removed, that's not intended to change any practice. It's just making it simply recordings because that's what Scott does and that's what we put on YouTube. The second part of it is that we would no longer live stream and record work sessions. And so I wanted to spend a moment to kind of share some of the thoughts behind this. This is a change to a bylaw. I think this may be the 3rd time that I've recommended this. So this is coming from me as something that I've seen over the years and have recommended to the board. And I always look at what is the challenge that I think we're having, the problem that we want to solve. And any time that you're a part of a team, you need to have the time and space to have meaningful discussions and dialogues where you can think out loud, where you can share ideas, where you can brainstorm, where you can have dialogue and discourse about a topic, and do that in a way that invites conversation and invites thoughts and ideas to work through problems. And I personally believe one of the problems we have with live streaming and recording work sessions is that is really tough to do when you're being broadcast. You become guarded. You become very strategic about what you say. Having authentic conversations becomes difficult because everything you say is recorded forever and can be used however people want to use that. And so that's something that we talk about. How do we come together and continue our good work as a 7-person leadership team, 8-person leadership team up here, and have those meaningful dialogues about the tough challenges that we face and will face? I find that hard to do when you're being live streamed and recorded. And I understand we're a public entity and we need to be transparent. And I'll share kind of why I think there's a balance to that and how we can still be transparent. But I think if you would ask any other organization that has a leadership team or a board of directors such as this and said, do you think it would impact your effectiveness as a team if you were every one of your board meetings was live streamed? I think the average person would say, yeah, that would be awkward, difficult, challenging, all of those things. So we take a look at the timeline and why am I recommending this now and why have I had the cadence? And so obviously this is something that I think is important and would help our effectiveness and efficiency as a board and as a team, a leadership team. But I think one of the things that has changed now is that the board has already publicly said we're not going on the ballot for any issue for at least we're not going on anything in May. So I think that gives us a 6-month window to say, we're not trying to do something and then say, oh, we're going to do a levy or we're going to do a big issue. The board has said we're not doing anything, at least through the May election. The next election is obviously November, and that's to be determined. So I think that timing is helpful to us. And I also think, as I said earlier in my opening comments, with the work that we're doing as a district, with the strategic planning work, there's a greater need for deep, robust conversations to address the work that we're doing. And when you have that level of depth and conversation that you need to have the freedom to explore ideas without what I've already mentioned, the concern of being on camera all the time. And so in addition to that, it's part of my rationale for this is we've tried to do other things. Last time I brought this policy up to review, we said, okay, why don't we try changing instead of this more formal structure? Let's create a U, and we'll sit around there, we'll face each other. Maybe that feel will help us out. This is just my personal feedback. I think it's become more awkward than beneficial. Although it's been nice to be in a square, we've got some board members that the back is to the audience. We've got cameras, Scott's shooting film where every time that this side talks, you just see the back of their head. You can't see the nonverbals. I don't know if it's truly addressed what we were trying to address. And so I don't think that practice has been helpful. One of the things that I think is important is also look, what are other people doing? And so the majority of school districts around are not live streaming work sessions. So excluding Strongsville, I surveyed 9 other neighboring school districts, and only 3 of them live stream and record meetings, so 33%. So it's not the common practice. The regular, they're both technically regular meetings, but the regular meeting is the one that pretty much everybody live streams and records. The other thing is we looked at the viewership. We looked at how many people are watching the Boxcast live stream, how many are watching that through our website, YouTube, and as somebody shared, community of 45,000 people, it's a small number. And the data's in board docs if you would want to look at that data. And then, as I said, when you're recorded and live streamed, people can take what you say out of context and put that out there. And I believe, and again, my opinion, we've seen over the past year that has been used as misinformation. It has been used to create misinformation and frustration and issues over things that are not an issue if you saw the whole meeting or you attended the whole meeting. Sound bites, as we all know, can be taken to move points forward that may not be in the reality of what was said or done. So with all that said, I truly believe that we are a transparent district, and we need to continue to be a transparent district. And anytime you make a change, there's going to be a natural, what are they trying to do? But I believe there's things that we can do to share the why, to share the problem we're trying to solve that I think resonates with most people. But continue to be transparent and engage people through our work. So some of the things that I would recommend, should the board want to entertain this change to the bylaw, is that the work session would just be discussion focused on a topic that we choose, like we typically do, as well as maybe previewing topics that are going to be on the regular meeting for a vote. But unless it's an emergency situation, we would not actually vote. The board would not vote on anything at a work session. It would all be at a regular meeting. George has experience in his past district of that's how it worked. And we feel it's set the standard with our folks that we're only voting on stuff at the live stream broadcast meeting. The work session would be a discussion. We feel that keeps it transparent. We're sharing everything publicly that's being voted on.
Would we allow public comment in the work
Yeah,
sessions?
so we would still do public comment in both. Obviously, they're all open meetings. Public comment would still be in both. Again, it would be at Laura's discretion and the discretion of the board. I think one of the things, if we take a look at how do we engage the community, I think if you're not live streaming and videotaping or recording, if an audience member is here and wants to add an input, it can be more authentic and timely instead of, hey, Cameron, we'll get back to you, or, again, that would be something to think about. But you could have the opportunity where you wouldn't have to have the formality of please go to the podium, speak into the mic. If you have an opinion that's germane to what we're talking about and you want to share, that could be considered with real-time feedback with people that are interested in the topic that we're talking about. People can obviously still attend the meetings in person. We still have detailed meeting minutes that give the context and the focus of the meeting. I have my biweekly newsletter that I typically share updates as to here's what's going on at the board meeting. And then we would continue to record and live stream the regular meetings when official action is taken. So that gives you kind of what are the challenges that I'm recommending that we take a look at and solve, the why now, why do I think it's a good idea, and how can we remain transparent. And so with that, Ms. Hausum, I'll turn it back over to you to go back to what I said originally is, does the board want to further entertain this possible change, or is there not an interest at this time?
Thank you, Dr. Iba. I would like to start by asking Haley and Michelle as our policy member, our committee members, do you have anything to add to what Dr. Iba just said?
I agree with it. I like the idea. I think that, especially when we've seen people take snippets of stuff that aren't necessarily full context, I think that that's one really good point, and I think people might be more authentic, whether it be people that have public comment who don't necessarily want to get up there and talk or give their address or whatever it may be on camera, or conversation. I think it's a good idea.
When we meet, there are additional people at the table, and I don't think that there were any additional comments about this one. That's the one I think that it was kind of, here's his, Cameron shared the same thing with us, and I think the general consensus was let's bring it to the whole group because this does affect all of us, and I think, as Cameron shared, timing is crucial. So here we are.
More comments? Questions?
So, I mean, I understand the rationale, et cetera. We've had these conversations in the district for many years, different ways. At the end of the day, the board meeting can be official, but it is supposed to be official. It is the board meeting. I err on the side of the spirit of Open Meetings Act and the spirit of sunshine laws. So I wouldn't, although I understand the rationale, I'm comfortable with broadcasting the meetings, and I'm comfortable with keeping it the way it is, especially the times that we have right now. I'd rather have the public be able to watch the movie, whether it's live or on Memorex. I think, and again, at the end of the day, we're balancing different needs and different challenges, and for me, I wouldn't be supportive of changing it. I would keep it the same way. I would continue to broadcast them. We've already had public comment about this very issue, and I remember too many years ago wanting to follow up on a board meeting, and the only way to follow up on that board meeting was to go to the library and get the VHS tape. And it confused the daylights out of the people when someone wanted to check the VHS tape out because they never had anyone want to check the VHS tape out before. So just historically, I think the way it is, and I think the message to the public, we talk about people misinterpreting things. Changing this, I think, will be easily misinterpreted.
Sharon, did you have anything to add?
I'm thinking. Okay. I think I understand where Cameron's coming from, and because it is sometimes it is really hard. But I'm feeling like the perception right now would be that there's something going on, because we've had a year of like that kind of thing, like being accused of things and everything else. I don't think. I get what you're saying and I understand it, but I don't think this is the right time to do it, because I think then you're just going to start hearing all other kind of comments like, well, what are they hiding? What are they hiding now? Even if we have minutes, that people, even if only a few people are watching it, they can, it's their choice. They want to watch it, they don't want to watch it. I mean, half the time, and maybe it's just me, I don't even think about being recorded. I probably say things I probably shouldn't, but I don't think about it. I think in a way that makes it good. I mean, I would hope that we all try to do that. Like, we should be transparent, you know, and if people don't like it, they can email us and tell us that they don't like us, which they do. You know, they don't hesitate to do that. So I think, all in all, what I would err, like Rich said, on the side of like, I don't want to disturb the community anymore. I don't want them to have another thing to say that we are hiding something or trying to do something that we shouldn't be doing. That's all. I understand, though, the whole idea of it. I just feel like it just would not go over really good. I do.
I'd be curious to see how many people show up to public comment for the work sessions versus what's live streamed or recorded in different districts, to see if that makes more public input for things, as opposed to people that are nervous, that are audience members or are city, residents that don't want to make public comment or don't want to bring their ideas forward because they don't want to be identified with their name attached to that. Because a lot of times when people come up here and they say something that is touchy, they'll be like, my kid's going to kill me for doing this, or like, this is my name, this is my address, now I'm going to voice my concern about this. I wonder how many other things we might find out about or hear about when people don't have to associate their last name or their address on a public recording, that you can go back and look at and say, oh, did you hear that so-and-so's mom went up there and was talking about this?
Mm-hmm. Do you know, Cameron, that the other communities, do they have the same policy about still having public comment and engaging the public that way, or?
I didn't ask that question, so I'm not sure.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just know I've had people say things, like I would come say something, but my kid would be mortified if I went up there and I said our name and our address and spoke about this. So I know that is a concern for people.
Right. I love your rationale. I think it all makes sense. If I could go back in time when we discussed this before the climate change, I think I would have had a different opinion then. I'm very nervous about public perception.
So I will bring it up again in 2 years. Persistence is a key trait of mine. Well, I appreciate the discussion and the thoughts you put into it. And, I think what I would share with us is whether we sharing what you're saying is we just have to get used to it and be comfortable with it. But I think we need to continue to find ways to have meaningful, authentic conversations if this is going to be the pathway that we're having. And just come together as a group to say if people want to pick out things and use them as fodder, then that's what it is. But we have to have the opportunity to have meaningful dialogue as a board. That's the heart of it. So, yeah. The second policy that we are bringing to the full board is 6218, which is the cash balance reserve policy. And so, George, you want me to take this one, or you want to highlight it?
It doesn't matter. It's up to you.
Go for it.
All right. Just let me switch this over. So as the reason that this one came back up is we brought it up at the policy committee meeting. One, it was one of the templates that Neola had as more and more school districts are requesting to adopt the cash balance policy. We were ahead of the curve and we adopted one sooner than Neola had put the template out. And it's similar. Our policy is similar to the Neola template. What's highlighted in green is Neola had this paragraph. I thought it fit well, so I recommended that we add the first paragraph into our policy. But the main change that we wanted to bring to the whole committee is Mrs. Bissell stated, made a comment at, forget which meeting, I don't know if it was the November meeting, board meeting, or the December meeting, about do we look at revisiting our cash balance policy, because did it get us in the situation with the cash in the sense where we maintain at least 90 days within any year of the 5-year forecast. In order to do that, in the beginning years of the forecast, you're going to have higher cash balances versus the ending. You'll hit the 90 ours is at that 90 days. So do we look to push up, instead of having it over the 5-year period, do we look at it to have it at another point in the 5-year forecast? At least X year, we'll have at least 90 days, and then the years after we'll address during that time. So as we had discussion in the policy committee, what we kind of agreed on there was in the third year of the forecast. So the third year of the forecast would be, in this instance, it would be, this current school year that we're in is the first year, and then 2 years after would be the third year, so kind of 2 school years from now. So that's what we wanted to bring forward. Do we want to leave it as is, or do we want to look at moving that benchmark of the 90 days to that third year of the forecast, and then we can start addressing any challenges after that and start solving years 4 and 5. I will add with the third year is that third year is key in the sense of when ODE, when we submit the 5-year forecast to the Ohio Department of the Department of Education, I get the new acronym, Workforce and Education. Yeah. They look at that third year, and they look at it as that third year deficit. So if we're still at least 90 days, we're not in a deficit. The key is if we don't address it in that third year, once that third year becomes an out year and it is a deficit in that third year, then we may be flagged by ODE. Once you are flagged by the department, depending on which status, in order to get out of a status, they want to see 5 years of sustainability, so which goes back to the 5th year, which may override the policy if we were to change it, but at least it gives an internal benchmark for us to work from for that 90 days as moving it to the middle, to the third year.
And George, just to make sure my thinking is accurate, based on the board's direction that we're not going to make any reductions for next year, we would be in violation of this policy because we would not be 90 days cash on hand within the 5th year of the forecast.
Potentially correct.
So we either make a change or we just acknowledge we're going to violate our own policy.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So you're saying in the third year, so if we change the policy, it would be till the third year of the forecast?
Yeah, we would be under the 90 day. So right now, if we spend down, we would be under the 90 days in the 5th year of the forecast.
Okay.
So if we change the policy to the third year,
Right.
we would still be higher in that aspect.
So as a clarification from my perspective, we wouldn't be in violation of the policy. We would be triggered by the policy. The violation, the violation would be, promptly upon receiving an indication that such cash balance may not be achieved, the treasurer shall report such a finding to the board. If you didn't report it, then you would be in violation of the policy. Upon such notification, the treasurer, the superintendent, and the treasurer, upon such notification by the treasurer, the superintendent and treasurer will prepare and propose options that the board may consider to forestall such an eventuality. So I don't necessarily think that if we don't change anything, we're in violation of the policy. I would argue that the policy's working as long as you continue to bring up the fact that you've already brought up.
Right.
So you've already notified us. We've already had several conversations about what we need to do. We'll continue to have those conversations. So I don't necessarily, I just question, I don't want it to come off like we're violating the policy. Violating the policy would be allowing it to happen. George never says a word and we never react to it. Or am I misunderstanding it?
I think that's a fair read of it.
I think that's a fair read, but what I would throw in there for consideration is if the indication is George is just going to report it, the part that I have a little pause with is the second part. Upon such notification, treasurer superintendent will prepare and propose options. If the board is not going to do anything with those options, it causes undue stress and angst within the organization of going through that process. So that's where you are exactly correct, Mr. Micko. But it's a practical application of the policy that is what gives me pause to say, if we're just going to say, hey, based on the recent failures of the levy, that we believe that we need to spend down a cash balance a little bit more than we have in the past to align with the community's wishes. And by doing it in year 3, that by proxy will spend down cash balances a little lower than if you were doing year 5. That triggers more of a practical application of what this board desires versus the year 5. So that's the only thing I'd share for consideration.
Other thoughts, questions?
Can we,
Go ahead.
so first of all, I really like the first paragraph. And I think that's
very good.
something that we all can agree on, and we should amend the policy. One of the things that I looked at the policy for was a tool above and beyond the 5-year forecast. But it does resonate with me that we don't want undue stress on the organization because we're aware of it and we don't perceive a reaction. So maybe we could think through and have some time to say, is there a better way to adjust it? To just say we're gonna change our metric or we're gonna change our standard from 3 years, but address the practical consideration.
Yeah.
If maybe we can
Think about
take
that.
between now and the next couple of meetings to think that through.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. One of the things I was going to say doesn't directly address either of these options, but I just wanted to point out and thank George. We've talked so many times about wanting to be a premier district, and I think one of the key parts of being a premier district is being a leader in the change, not the follower. And we've received so much criticism about this particular policy, but what we're seeing now is that this is necessary and appropriate. This is what our, Neola is sharing with us. It's asking other boards to adopt. We led the way for that. George acknowledged something and saw something that was necessary before everybody else. We were ahead of the curve. And we've been that way with several policies. We had a cell phone policy. We've had this policy. There's a third one, a big one that we already had. But we have been ahead of the curve. Oh, letters training, it's not a policy, but now it's required by the state. We were already doing that. And I just want to point out that for the public that is worried, especially about this policy, that it is good practice. Even though I said, let's think about this. Do we need this? Like, evidence is showing that, yes, indeed, this is a good policy. Do I think we need to consider both things that you both shared? Yes. And I like the suggestion of taking some time to reconfigure what does it look like in order to be successful. So thank you, George.
Thanks. So Ms. Hausma, I'll wait for your direction as to when you want, I think it's enough time, and we'll bring it back on an agenda for further discussion with the focus of wordsmithing that section that we referred to.
Okay.
Any other questions for me on the policies? The next discussion item is mobile units. So one of the things, obviously, over the past 2 years, we've installed mobile units at 4 of our 5 elementary buildings. One of the things that we kind of marked out as the timeline is, even though it's early, it's January, we need to start deciding if we need mobile units. We need this lead time to contact with the company, get architectural drawings and, city approval, and be ready to go with that purchase. So we're ready for the beginning of the school year. So what I've linked there for you, if you take a look at that link, the green are currently the mobile units that we have across the district. All, Chapman and Muraski and Farrar each have 2 mobile units. Kinsner has 1, and Whitney has none. And so you could see in each one of the mobile units, there's 2 classrooms. And so you could see exactly what that unit is being utilized for and what classes or activities are being done. So that's just a touch point on how we're currently using the mobile units. If you slide all the way to the right, in the blue are our projections for the 25-26 school year. So Jenny, over the past few months, has been working on projected, we don't know kindergarten enrollment. I think next week they're starting to register on January 14th. It'll open up. But based on trends and data we have, we've projected what kindergarten could be, as well as bumped everybody else up a grade. And so what this means is +1 down 2. What that means is if you look in total, these things happen at different grade levels, but at Chapman next year, we are going to have one more additional grade class. Grade level X will have one more teacher, one more class than we did this past year. Kinsner, we will have 2 less classrooms. Maraski, 1 less, and Sarar, based on our projections right now, will remain exactly as they are this year. So we do have to remember that this is January. Things change, people move in, especially in the summertime. But right now, this is where we are building our recommendations. And as you can see, Chapman already has 2 mobile units. They do not have any more available classroom space. So what this means is by adding another classroom next year, which we have to do, right now there's no grade levels in the mobile units. Like Sarar, we have 2 5th grade classrooms and a 4th grade classroom. This most likely means, if trends continue, that Chapman is going to have either a 5th or a 4th grade classroom or classrooms out in the mobile unit to create space for this additional class. So with that all being said, in talking with Jenny and the principals and Steve, we do not feel that any more mobile units are needed for next year, that 2 is sufficient at the 3 buildings that have 2. Kinsner only has 1, and they're reducing by 2 sections, so it'll still go to good use, but we won't have a need there, and obviously with Sarar and Whitney staying at the same level. So I'm open to any questions or further research or data that you'd like me to provide tonight or get, but right now, my recommendation for next year is that we will not add any more mobile units.
I just have a practical question. So, like, let's use Kidsner, for example, where they have a gifted math and band and orchestra. I mean, is it fair to make the assumption that the orchestra is happening while there's no math class happening?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And there's another one, too. That's
Yeah.
also true for
Chapman.
Chapman.
Yes.
Yeah, Chapman they're having small group while
Yeah.
the orchestra is playing. So that they just are vacating that space during the.
Yeah, so the way the schedule works out is that band and orchestra is typically there during lunch and recess, and there's an IE period attached to that. And the way the gifted math schedule works, they are not teaching gifted math at that time.
Okay.
So that's how it works out, yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any feedback on the mobile units that we have currently in place? Like any positive feedback, negative, or just nothing?
No, I think, and this is just anecdotal, right? We haven't surveyed or did anything formal, but anecdotal. We've got the spaces where they need to be in terms of, doors between the classrooms so they can move and exchange throughout. Steve met with me today. We are going to put gutters on all the mobile units in front of the doors because when it rains, without gutters, it's dripping right at the entryway. So there'll be gutters there. We're also going to put awnings in over the doorways so kids can have that. We will be adding a few more of our own internal safety features to the mobile units to get them up to similar speed with the rest of the buildings. He's already installed cameras outside of all the buildings so teachers could see the kids coming and going, that we have all that there. So in terms of the space, of the mobile units I've been in, people like the space. I mean, it's a mobile unit, but, you have windows, it's a good sized space, and the kids are adaptable and flexible. So no, it's been obviously not the place that you want, but for needing usable space, it's been positively received.
Is it hard in this weather with them? Do you get any complaints from the teachers? Because they obviously, on days like this, they have to all get their coats on, I would assume. I mean, I've seen where it is at Sarar. They would probably have to get their coat on.
I haven't received anything yet,
No.
or nor have I had the principals say anything to me. Have you? No.
Okay.
Has Steve talked to anyone or worked anything on air circulation? Because I know that I've had the pleasure of facilitating the 5th grade winter party, and it was very fragrant. And I hear that is a common problem. And I know that the teachers have worked to try to mitigate that, but I'm wondering as a district level if we've had that conversation.
I'll check with them and see where we're at with it. I know one of the challenges we were having is the unit is controlled by one room. And so, obviously, it could depend on the temperature or what's going on in the classroom, so that it wasn't like two separate air handling units that can control. So I'll get an update and follow up with the board on where we're at with that issue.
So does it have windows or anything?
It doesn't, we had the
Oh,
windows
so they-
full open in December, and it did help some,
Yeah,
but I know that it's a chronic,
yeah.
at least in this particular. I
Yeah.
don't know how it would be with the ones that are having more flow of students going in and
Yeah.
out. I could see it being less of a concern, but when you
Yeah.
have a regular classroom in there, it poses a
It
different
gets, yeah.
challenge.
Say 5 bodies as opposed to 25 bodies.
Yeah.
Yes.
Big
Yeah.
difference.
I'll check into it.
I know it's early, but I'd be interested to see at the end of the school year comparing learning. We have social studies, we have science, we have gifted math all occurring there, and comparing it to previous years.
Sure. Any other, everybody's okay with the plan of not to add? I mean, I know everybody's itching to add more mobile units, but,
We're going to start
Yeah.
double stacking them if we.
Mr.
have to.
Breckner is very excited with my recommendation, but no, I think we're good. That's the plan we'll go forward with. Obviously, one of the things we'll be looking at is, March, April, we get to feel pretty good about where we're at with enrollment. So if things change, I'll let you know, but we have wiggle room in the buildings right now, so we're pretty good.
Great.
We
So
should
it-
have a meeting in one of the mobile units and broadcast it, just so people can see.
Are you looking at Scott's face? That's right.
Coming at you live.
Yeah. Any other questions on my items before we move on to the rest of the agenda? All right, we do have one item under business services. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that school bus transportation for the students listed below be declared impractical due to the time and distance required to provide transportation, the cost of providing transportation in terms of equipment, maintenance, personnel, and administration, and the additional service unavoidably disrupts current transportation schedules. Be further resolved that the board, in lieu of providing transportation, pays parents of the students attending this school, which is Lake Ridge Academy. The reimbursement will be based on the allotted amount by the state. Any questions under business services? Under curriculum, we have one field placement affiliation agreement. Be it resolved upon my recommendation that the field placement affiliation agreement between Franklin University and Strongsville City School District be approved as presented in the exhibit. And then the following are field trips. So under numbered or overnight trips or out-of-state trips. So under number 2, we have a trip for the wrestling team to travel to Perrysburg to participate in the Perrysburg Invitational Tournament, January 10th through 11th. Transportation will be via school bus. Lodging and meals will be paid by the coaches, participating students, and the Mustang Wrestling Club and Strongsville Athletic Boosters. Number 3 is an overnight trip for the gymnastics team to travel to Cincinnati, Ohio to participate in the Win the Day Invitational, February 7th through 8th. Transportation, again, will be via school bus, and lodging and meals will be paid by the gymnastics booster funds. And finally, we have an out-of-state trip for our high school boys varsity basketball team to travel to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, March 29th through April 4th to participate in the 2025 High School Ripken Experience. Transportation will be via commercial airlines. Entry fee will be paid by the Strongsville baseball team funds, and lodging and meals will be paid by participating students and fundraisers. And as a clarification, since it doesn't read specifically clear, the airlines will be paid by fundraising and booster funds as well. So those are the 2 overnight and 1 out-of-state trip.
Dr. Ivor, for clarification, when you stated the subject, you said basketball. It's baseball.
Oh, baseball, thank you very much, I appreciate
Let's
that.
go to Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. The famous basketball player, Cal Ripken. Thank you, George. Nothing under student services. Under HR, we have 3 items, or do you want to do it for old time's sake?
Whatever you want.
Sure, Jenny, go for it.
Under Human Resources, we have 3 items for you. We have the resignation of a certificated staff. We have 2 resignations for non-certificated staff. And finally, as you met him this evening, we have the recommendation for Dr. Christopher Broughton for our Coordinator of Technology.
And unless there's any questions on my report, that concludes it.
All right, thank you. That brings us to the adoption of the consent calendar. Action by the Board of Education and adoption of consent calendar at this point of the agenda means that all items appearing in this agenda denoted as type-action consent, which items constitute the consent calendar, are adopted by one single motion unless a member of the board or the superintendent requests that such items be removed from the consent calendar and voted upon separately. Do we have any requests? No? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Stavcek, seconded by Ms. Cobain. Take the roll.
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Motion passes. Next up, we have Board of Education Other. Do we have any others? Hearing none. Next is executive session, and I am pleased to report that we have no items to discuss tonight in executive session. And that we can adjourn the meeting. Do I need to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. George, can you take the roll?
Ms. Stavcek?
Yes.
Ms. Cobain?
Yes.
Mr. Miko?
Yes.
Mrs. Hausum?
Yes.
Mrs. Bissell?
Yes.
Meeting is adjourned at 8:38 PM.